Hello.
Hi.
It's nice to have you.
Thank you. So I'm going to I have to turn off your thing on the computer because it was echoing back. Yeah, I did have to join from my phone, not the computer. So it makes it a little challenging since I do not have a tripod for my phone.
Oh,
So I'm trying to
that's
find a way to
okay.
work around it and make it stay and then I can, yeah.
Well, we actually just learned some of our other guests had an issue connecting with their computer. So I need to I need to tell people that prior to.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is so nice to meet you. And we love organic and how it is, and we don't require fancy. We're not fancy.
That's great.
We just like to have real conversations with people that, you know, I think it lets people I think it lets people in on testimonies of why Jesus is so good and how you can cultivate friendships in a real way. And we don't have to be in each other's actual space. We can
Right.
be friends online. I am excited about our list of topics.
Yeah.
I was telling our guests that this is the week of hope for Advent. I don't know if you celebrate Advent. I don't think that
We
you and
do.
I talked about that. Yeah, this is my very first year celebrating Advent.
Well,
So,
welcome.
yes, it's good. I love it. It's so meaningful.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really puts a deeper level on the season.
Yeah. Yep. It does. Yep. We have been doing Advent. I actually have it in my notes here to talk about. We've been doing this since even before we had, and I don't know if you know much of my story, but before we were pregnant with Ezekiel and all the loss that we experienced, Advent was something that was a part of our lives as we were raising our kids, and we were reading certain books like Jotham's Journey and Anne Boskamp's book, and doing the Jesse Tree and all that kind of stuff. So we do love, Advent is one of our favorite times of year.
Well, I would love to, I'd love for you to start us off and tell everyone a little bit about yourself. I did go through your story just a little bit, but I haven't told our um, watchers anything about you yet. So
Okay.
if you'd like to give us a short bio, that would be great.
Short bio. Okay. So my name is Dawn Byington, and I am the host of the Grieving with God podcast. I am an author, and I wrote Ezekiel Star. It has not yet been published, but it is on my to-do list. Everything is done. It just needs to be uploaded to Ingram Sparks. And so it is a story about our loss of our son, Ezekiel. We lost him in 2018, a month after we lost my mother to cancer. So it was a season of intense grief. We carried him for 33 weeks, sorry. He had trisomy 18. He was diagnosed at week 13 in utero. And we had been infertile not infertile completely, but for 10 years after having my daughter, we've been trying to have a child. And so that's what Ezekiel Star is about our walk with grief during that season. And then the podcast is just talking with other people who also have grief stories and sharing. I love sharing grief stories. I love sharing, what people have gone through and how they have grieved, and then finding out how God was with them through those times in their lives.
I love it. I don't know. I want to say this gently but honestly. It's very important for people to be able to grieve
Mm.
and for people to be able to grieve not only in private but in public and in ways that you're not making everyone uncomfortable. I think that it's maybe maybe the Americanized version of grief has just tried to be kicked out because we want each other to be happy. We want to be around happy people. And it's a, it's a, it's a strain to be around people that are grieving.
That's right. Yeah. And we have, I think and I talk a lot about this too. And I used to have a blog, and I used to blog about this a lot, where we are not so good with death in America.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's because we just don't have a culture around death like other cultures have,
Mhm.
rhythms and routines and traditions and remembrances regarding death and mourning and grief in general. But in America, we are just kind of like, oh, you can go over there and do that. And it's fine that you're not okay, just not here.
Mhm.
And I do challenge that a lot in my blog and in my writings and even in my podcast, to just say we need to be more comfortable with grief. We need to be more comfortable sitting in silence with people and just letting them be sad and letting them grieve, letting them talk, and not trying to find a solution or an answer to everything. Because, and that's part of my story too, is God, when he met me, didn't always have a solution for my grief. He would just sit with me. So.
And every single person will at some point in their life experience grief. It's never going to be the same way for
Right.
any two people because we're human beings. We're made up of many thoughts and so much history, and our chemical makeup is different. And, the area and the world that we live is different. Our family, our dynamic is just entirely different from anybody else. So nobody's grief is going to look the same. But you are right. We need to be more comfortable with it because everyone will experience grief at some point in their lives.
Yes. Yes. And different types of grief. That's another thing that, I prepared to talk about, is that we do have multiple types of grief. And some people think that, oh, grief is really just the loss of a significant loved one, or it is just like a great big loss. But it really can be something, and I was thinking about this today, as like unpacking your Christmas ornaments and finding out that that one ornament you loved is
Mhm.
broken or lost, or it's a special memory that is
Yeah.
gone. That is a type of grief. It's
Yeah.
a loss of saying, you know, there was a hope that was there, there was an expectation, there was a love, and then it's gone. And so that, I don't want to minimize anybody's grief, that there are different levels of grief, and then there are things that people grieve over, like I said, that are not just great big losses, and they too can be called grief.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Well, so to tell our audience, we work on a structure of we create topics and questions. We don't always adhere to them tightly, but we like to keep the questions available to stay on the path.
Yes.
Um, and I love the questions for you. So, are you ready to get started?
Yes.
Okay. So, if we begin with hope as expectation, not emotion, when you think about Advent, hope isn't a feeling, it's a promise. What was the point in your life when hope meant waiting rather than feeling?
Yes, and I did love this question, because I think we confuse the fact that hope is feeling, just like we confuse the fact that we think joy is a feeling. But hope and joy are not feelings, not emotions, although God did gift us with feelings and emotions, and those are valid.
Mhm.
But hope and joy are much deeper than of what I'm feeling, because what I'm feeling in this moment can change in a moment, right? But hope has a foundation, and it is a lot stronger than just I'm feeling good today or I'm feeling hopeful today. And so to just kind of talk a little bit, I'm going to get to this. When I was at 13 weeks pregnant, we were with anticipation. We had been waiting and waiting and waiting to be pregnant with our third child. We'd been trying all different kinds of things. We finally were pregnant. There was so much hope, so much joy, so much, like I said, expectation. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, so we knew her time was short. His due date was her birthday. So there was all these layers of we were just ecstatic. And then when we got the diagnosis that Ezekiel had trisomy 18 and he was not going to live, we were actually told he would pass away within 2 weeks. I literally didn't feel anything. I felt numb. I felt paralyzed. I like for the first couple of hours after getting off the phone with the clinician, I didn't know what to do. I was just numb, like I said. The sadness and the anger and the frustration, those came later, and man, did those come in that wave. But hope was something that my husband and I had to cling to. We didn't just have hope, it wasn't just there. It was something that we had to actively work to cling to seek God out and rest in that hope. And it wasn't even that the hope was that all these things would work out, okay? That we would go for the ultrasound and, our hope is that he's not diagnosed with trisomy 18, or our hope is that he will be born and he's not as bad as they say it is. It wasn't even that was our hope, although that was our desire. That was our prayer, our desire. But the hope was that we knew God would not leave us, right? That was our hope, was our in God. And that on earth, though we might lose people, but we might lose our son, my mother, our hope was in that there was a Savior who redeemed us already, and that we will be reunited and see them in heaven. And that when all things are made right, when he returns, that the hope of the world is Christ. And it's not that all things that we desire will come to pass. And I think that was really, really hard for us in the beginning, because we had so many desires. We wanted my mother to be healed. We wanted Ezekiel to be healed. And so what I saw in this, when you mentioned that, hope was going to be the topic, I loved it, because this is what Advent mirrors, right? Advent mirrors that the world is waiting for their hope in Christ, right? And that Christ, the Redeemer, came to earth to us. And not just some Greek god living up in the sky somewhere, right? He came to us, and that he brought hope to the world, and that was himself. And so we have our Advent wreath. We read the stories, we light the candles every Sunday for Advent. And that Christmas, when we were carrying Ezekiel, we did all that. We lit the candles, we did the prayers, we did the stories. Even when my mom was in hospice, she was in the hospital and in hospice the month of December. And we realized, and we clung to the fact that hope was not a wish. Hope was our state of being as we rested in Christ and as we rested in his arms, because there was nothing we could do, right? Nothing that we could say or do to make our desires come true. We just really had to rest in that he was in control and that he was our anchor.
I think that's stunning. The whole world would benefit from that. Truly. Dawn, that was absolutely beautiful. I couldn't have said anything better myself on grief. Because, well, it's so true. If you break things down and you really think about that, because of Christ, we do live in hope. And it's not that we're going to get our way on everything. And Jesus experienced sadness.
Yes.
And he could have spun the world in the opposite direction if he would have wanted to.
Yes.
And he didn't. He experienced sadness and grief right alongside us.
Right.
In his time on earth, and even now.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that. That was beautiful. So hope in the shadow of loss is the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we navigate grief with hope constantly as our guiding light?
So I feel like the holidays especially intensify grief. And navigating, that word navigating grief, that stuck out to me. So what I wanted to kind of talk about was that we shouldn't try and find the right way to say this. When you're feeling the intensity of those emotions, especially during the holidays, and what people don't tell you is that the first year of grieving, the holidays are the hardest thing to get through. You don't think that sometimes, but you're like, okay, they might have passed away in January or February, but come Christmas time, those holidays are really, really hard. And so navigating that, some people try to run away from their grief. They try to not be guided by it. And so what I have encouraged a lot of people to do as I've walked with people and interviewed people is to embrace your grief, which sounds contrary to what, the American culture kind of tells us. So don't run from it. Don't hide it. Don't stuff it. Don't say you're okay when you're not okay. Um, and it's okay if you're at a holiday party and you have to slip away because you're on the verge of tears, right? So, and some people may not understand that. And I have been told, oh, hey, it's been a long time. You shouldn't be crying anymore. But grief isn't like that. It's tricky. It's not linear. You don't move through it, right? You don't get to the other side of grief. And that's a common cliche that we're told a lot. Oh, you just got to go through the stages and then you've gone through grief. But grief is more that you move with it, right? It shifts and it changes. The intensity fluctuates, but you still carry grief, right? And so I have learned that I cannot carry grief if I do not have hope. Because if I'm carrying grief without hope, then I'm in despair. And I know that my Redeemer has come to give me hope and not despair. And so that guiding light is really simply the easiest thing is Jesus. That Jesus is the hope, and that grief without hope in my mind is despair. And so if I want to wallow or in sadness, then I'm not really being guided by hope. And the hope is that I can't carry these things, right? I am not carrying the grief. What I'm doing is I'm giving it to God. He is stronger than me. He understands the depths of grief, of sorrow, and of pain. And he sees all that we're going through. He understands when those shifts of grief are going to come. They sometimes knock us out of the park, sometimes not expecting it. But I can rest, and I can even embrace my grief if I am being guided by the fact that Jesus is my hope, that he's that anchor that I have already said that I've attached myself to, and I'm letting him guide me through it. Otherwise, it's despair. It's just wallowing. And so going back to this week of hope and Advent, it is that he is the hope of the world, that his light has come, and navigating grief is really just anchoring yourselves in him.
I agree. I, you know, it's it's such a dichotomous thing, grief is, and we wouldn't grieve if we didn't love the person.
That's
And
right.
loving the person causes us to grieve
Right.
when they're gone. So it's all of this, it's kind of, I mean, I hate to use a phrase so light as a balancing act, and yet, it does. It'll hit you and you don't even know that it's coming.
Yeah.
And then you're struggling with not making other people uncomfortable, and back again to, America doesn't, we America struggles in grief.
Yes.
We truly do. And it could be such, rather than waiting for the person to be done grieving so that we don't have to be in their presence with the grieving anymore, if we could learn to embrace that person,
Yeah.
it would cause a connection that would be a much higher connection than just an average everyday
Mm-hmm.
passing, hi, how are you?
Right. Right. And I think we shy away from interacting with people who are grieving because we're paralyzed. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to say.
Mhm.
Afraid of saying the wrong thing, right? But I believe that sometimes the grieving person, all they need is, sometimes I'll just text someone and say, I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for you right now. And that's really all I needed a lot of the times. I mean, we went 20 weeks after the diagnosis of carrying Ezekiel, not knowing when he was going to die. It could have been at any moment. We had no idea. And just those little text messages from people of, you don't have to respond. I'm not expecting anything from you. Just want to let you know I love you. Want to let you know I'm praying for you. We had friends who would drop coffees off at my doorstep, just ring the doorbell and leave. Flowers sometimes, just letting us know that they were thinking of us. And then I had friends who would come over and literally just sit and listen to me talk and cry and not offer any encouragement or hope or not hope, but not trying to fix it, not
Yeah.
trying to answer for it, but just sitting there with me. And I think that if we can get a little bit more comfortable with ourselves to just say, I can reach out to this person and let them know I love them and not expect anything back and not try to fix their problem. I think, I think that's what America needs to embrace. I think that's what, and not just America, I think that's what our churches need to embrace.
Yeah.
I did some workshops with some church elders, and we talked a lot about this, about how to minister to their people that they were in charge of. And and then the question was, well, do we make meal trains? Do we, how do we navigate? And I'm like, no, because sometimes the grieving don't even really want to eat. It's not
Right.
that. It's just that they want to know that they're not alone, and that somebody is thinking of them. And it's something as simple as, like I said, just sending a text and saying, I'm praying for you.
That is, I'm sorry that you went through that. That would be a very unique type of situation to, it would take the power of God to go through that.
It did. It did. Um,
So you said you have other children. You have older children than Ezekiel?
yes, my son is turning 20 next week, and my daughter is 17, and Ezekiel passed away 7 years ago. So, yeah.
Did they know did they have any understanding of what was going on? Did
It,
you?
yeah, it was a hard time for them. Even now, my daughter is in some therapy, and it's coming up now, her grief about Ezekiel that she didn't really understand at that point. And so they're, in her therapy, they're talking about some of that. But the other thing was, it was all happening at the same time as we're dragging them to the hospitals for hours, days, traveling to other hospitals out of state to be with my mom during her surgeries. So all of this, we were going through all of this together all at the same time. And so for them, it was very confusing because they were losing their grandmother and their brother who they've never met. Their mother, I was a homeschool mom. I was homeschooling them, and I, was getting a degree. I had actually had finished my degree and my praxis test the day I got the call about Ezekiel. And so we were all home together. I'm homeschooling them. They just saw their mom crying every day. My son has said it affected him, that he was sad that we were sad. He didn't really understand or have an attachment to Ezekiel, although every year we do put up an Ezekiel tree, and my kids do love to decorate it. And so we decorate it with stars, white magnolias, and that is one of their favorite decorating things. Is we do talk about it, and we decorate it every Christmas. So
That's beautiful. I think that I'm not coming up with another word, but the commemorative things for,
Well,
you know,
yeah, and I think it's important to talk about it too, and to not like keep everything in because you're scared of what the outcome is.
right.
Because kids understand a lot more than sometimes parents, myself, give them credit for, and they're struggling, and then you don't find out till way later that they're like, well,
Yeah.
we're there with you.
Yeah, and we would ask them along the way, if what they were feeling, what they were struggling with, and they were like, I don't know. But then years later, they're like, yeah, we were really sad. We were sad more for you. My daughter said she was sad because she was looking forward to having a brother, but she didn't really know how to process that at 10 years old. So
yeah.
it's coming out a little bit now. But yeah, we didn't hide anything from them. They actually came with us to all our doctor's appointments. They saw every ultrasound that we saw. My daughter was actually given permission by the sonographer to take a video of his heartbeat at one of the ultrasounds. And so just having them part of that process and that process of grieving, I I think that was important. It showed them too how to come alongside their own friends who are grieving now and who might be going through hard times. They don't walk away from those people.
Well, and I think personally, I think kids are resilient if you give them the opportunity to
Mm.
be resilient. It seems like when we try to hide things from our kids, or when we say you have to go away, or we don't want you to experience the sadness or this grief, then
Mhm.
they don't get the opportunity to be resilient. And I think you're right. I think that that is a really good opportunity for them to go out into the world and be compassionate with
Yeah,
people and understand, that grief is a part of life and it's okay. You can sit with somebody. You
that's right.
don't have to give an answer,
That's right.
you know?
That's right. Yeah.
All right, Robin's got to
Okay.
go.
You.
I
Bye.
gotta go get her Christmas tree. So
Oh,
just a
bye.
minute. We'll do good.
All right. So,
Um, so I kind of get off on. I was very curious about your kids.
yeah.
Um, I think that I didn't know I was going to enjoy this conversation as much as I am, but I think it's so healthy for people. I really do. I think that people are going to gain a lot out of this. That grief doesn't have to be this super scary situation to deal with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our family struggled a really great loss 17 years ago, and um, people just you already said they don't want to say the wrong thing.
Hmm.
So they just avoid you,
That's right.
you know?
Yep.
And in one way, it's endearing that people are that way, that they don't want to hurt you, they don't want to say the wrong thing. And on the same hand, though, it's isolating to the person that is suffering the loss.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm happy that you had plenty of lovely people in your life.
We did. We had an amazing community group in our church. We do community groups for 3 years, and so we all do life together, for 3 years. And we were like a year in with this group, and we had already gone through miscarriages and deaths with people, and so we had been like, everybody in that group had been well acquainted with grief. And so I lost, we were in the process of losing Ezekiel. In that process, some ladies in our group also had miscarriages. And then the leader of our group lost her father during that period of time. And just people who know grief know how to grieve, and they know how to be with those who are grieving. And it was just a really great, uh, they were like, just like the arms of Moses. Like, I can't, not like that, but they were girding us up. They were supporting us and holding us and helping us and not leaving us alone. And the unfortunate thing is we knew people who were in not necessarily our church, but we knew people who grieved in other places and didn't have that support and didn't have that girding up. And it's isolating. You feel alone. You feel like nobody understands you. And it could be a really sad, despairing place.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is anyone that's listening. I know I keep saying it, but anyone that's listening, you'll gain some tools here to help you navigate if the next person that you come upon that
Right.
could be grieving. So what does grief look like when we frame it in a way that isn't always sadness?
And that is a good question, because I can tell you I grieve every day. It's been
Mm-hmm.
7 years since I lost my mom, 7 years since I lost my son, and there's not a day that goes by where I don't feel some sort of sadness or grief. Um, but I'm not crying every day. I'm not weeping every day. I'm not hiding away, right? And so, if you are grieving and weeping and hiding away, and you're so sad that you can't function, that is a different kind of situation. That is something where I have encouraged people, hey, if this is where you are, this is you need help. You need to find a professional. You need to find somebody to talk through these things with, because we don't want us in those moments of despair and sadness that are just drowning us, right? But there is healthy grief, and it is okay to continue to grieve for long periods of time, and I think people need to know that too. So there are seasons to grief. There are moments when I might look at something that's my mom's, like I have her pictures up on my mirrors, and there are mornings I look at it and I smile and I'm like, wow, she was such a beautiful lady. I really love her life. And then there are times when I look at her and I just miss her so much, and I could even cry right now thinking about it because it's Christmas is her favorite season. And I just like, I can be brought to tears in an instant. And it's not sadness as much as it is just longing and mourning the life that I'm not with anymore. Um, so sometimes I might silently weep. There's waves of sadness. Um, I'm also trying to look at my notes here because I kind of went off my went off my notes. But there can be joy in grief, honestly, because there's joy in knowing that you loved someone so deeply. There's joy that you shared life with someone, and even there's joy in looking back. We have a little memorial of Ezekiel, some things that we kept in a box that are kind of displayed, and then we have his urn that was actually handmade for us by a friend of ours in our community group. And my husband and I, it's in our bedroom, we get to look at it every day, and it's not the sadness anymore. It's just I'm kind of glad that it was a part of my life. I'm glad to have had that here, and I'm glad that I can look back and remember it. But I do think about this, and so one of the things that I'm really big on is remembrances. And remembrances are not sadness, right? Or they can be, and sometimes they can be. But a remembrance is something that God actually has commanded us to do, to remember the things that He has done for us, and to tell our children so they tell the generations, and the generations look back and say, this is what God has done. And so there are moments in all of our lives where we can say, this is a moment that God was here, and we can set up a remembrance. And so even with the loss of a loved one, there are things you can do. So I think back to my husband's cousin. They lost a child unexpectedly. She died shortly after birth, like a couple minutes after birth. They revived her, and then she died shortly after that. And it's been 13 years, maybe more, since they've lost her. And every year at Christmas, they set up a Christmas tree at her grave, and they invite all the relatives and family and friends to come and put an ornament on her tree. And they've done this every year, and it's a way to honor her life, to honor her memory. They set up charities during the season for her as well. They are constantly talking about her to other people, and so they're doing these things to make sure that they never forget what God has done in their lives. And that is one of the reasons why we also have an Ezekiel tree at this time of year, because as God commanded Joshua, I'd like to set up those 12 stones right in the Jordan to remember this moment. Our time with Ezekiel was so significant in all of our lives, and we saw God move in so many ways. A lot of that is detailed in my book, and just the moments where God showed Himself. We didn't want to ever forget that. So we actually do have a basket of stones by our fireplace that when we had his memorial, people wrote on these stones, and they wrote scripture verses or they wrote encouraging words. And so we actually have a basket of stones. And then we also have our Ezekiel tree. And that is what we decorate with our kids as a remembrance every Christmas time. On my mom's birthday, I try to make her favorite cake. And so just different things that are not sadness, but they're still grieving, to be able to say, I haven't forgotten this person, or I haven't forgotten this moment in my life. Because like I said, grief can be losing a job. It could be, losing an ornament that was special. It could be something simple, but it still hurts. And so you can do something. You can do something that's not sadness, but is still honoring that grief.
I liked that question also, because grief and sadness kind of seem to go hand in hand, but it's not.
Mm.
We lost my mom 5 years ago, and uh, I didn't even realize this. And I giggle. My mom was hilarious. She was the funniest person we ever knew. And in grieving her and missing her and remembering her, I will giggle at times. I'll laugh
Yep.
because she was so funny. And she did not like to deal with people in sadness. She was totally okay if you were crying to get through something. She was great about that. She's a very compassionate woman, but for somebody to be depressed, that's probably a better word, a constant sadness.
Right.
She didn't like that. So she would make you laugh. She would do something silly. And I love that. I love to remember those things about her. But it's when I feel the grief coming over me, I try to remember something beautiful about her, something funny, or how she would react,
Yeah.
Something I wished I would have put this in here because I feel like you would be perfect for this. I feel like people should, when you were talking about extended periods of grief, I feel like if people grieve properly, I don't know how else to say, if people actually grieve the
Mm.
loss of someone that they love,
Mm.
they can come to a place where that deep, overwhelming sadness
Yeah.
kind of lifts. I've seen people in our lives, I've seen it a few times where people will lose someone very important to them and they refuse to grieve.
Yes.
They
Yes.
want to self-medicate, they want to turn to alcohol, they want to turn to some other nefarious thing just to avoid even thinking about it. And I think that is a very dangerous place to be in.
It it is. And there is a thing with suppressed and unresolved grief. It
Mhm.
actually does affect your brain. And so that you do have grief brain. Grief brain is a real thing. It's that foggy, I don't know what's going on kind of stuff that happens in the early
Mhm.
grief. But when you suppress grief, when you stuff it down, you don't process it, you don't deal with it, there is something that does happen to your brain. And then it becomes almost like a trauma brain. So it's almost like you endured a trauma and now you start manifesting these things that someone who went through a deep trauma, but yours is grief. It's like altered something in you. And so we said, like, I work with children have trauma. And
Mhm.
so some of the things we see in them are just strange and odd behaviors, risky behaviors. We see kids who are more angry than happy. And it's just when we start getting them some help, when we start doing some processing, or we start giving them the space to grieve or mourn something they lost that they might not have thought they lost. This is not just with children, this is with adults as well. It does change your brain again. So there does need to be a processing of grief. I did talk with a woman last year. She was one of the first ones on my podcast, and she talked about how when she had her miscarriage, I mean, it was more than a miscarriage. There was a lot going on. It was an ectopic pregnancy. She almost died. She went into a deep depression, and she avoided everybody. She wallowed in her bed. She wasn't even really thinking about the what was going on. She was just sad and depressed. And she said it really wasn't until a friend of hers came in, kind of grabbed her out of bed and made her talk about it, that she was able to really allow herself to feel all of the grief. She was afraid of that grief. She was afraid of that feeling. She was able to process all of it, to mourn, to let it all out. That's when her life started to change back into being happy again, being able to be with her husband again, being able to live her life. Because there is something that happens when we do not process.
I've experienced it. A, a good friend of mine lost her son and she just refused.
Mm.
She I never quite thought of it that way, but I think that what you said, I think she was afraid to feel it.
Hmm.
And she didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, she would cry, of course, but self-medicating, doing anything she could to stay busy, to not deal with it. She just,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
complete avoidance of it.
That's right.
And that fits, that cause yourself, I mean, the reason that you're grieving is trauma enough
Hmm. That's right.
without, doubling
That's right.
your trauma. It's hard. It is hard though. It's hard. So
It is.
thank God that we have you to help us guide us along a little bit. And so our next question, this is um God in the ashes. And
Mhm.
this is the most important thing. This is the most important
Yep.
question I think that we will talk about in our conversation. But was there a moment you realized that God wasn't just watching your grief, but he was sitting in it with you?
Yes. And I'm not, I cannot promise that I won't cry through this. Because I've thought about this a lot. So there were many, many moments throughout those weeks, right? And after, and I talked to in my book about the year after grief is also huge. And so even the year after grief was hard. And there were all these moments that we can look back on and see God, right? There was one particular moment that has always stood out to me. I love that you said God who sits in the ashes, because the book of Job is one of my favorite books, of course.
Mine too.
I love everything about it. And the visual of sitting with Job in the ashes, in the lowest point, and God stepping down into that and answering his questions. God didn't have to do that. God did not have to answer Job. And
No,
I
he didn't.
overlook that when we read the book. We're like, oh, well, it's about time God showed up. No, God didn't have to do any of that, but he did because he loved Job. And even though he didn't answer him the way we would have wanted him to answer, he still was compassionate and tender with him. And so, yeah, I love that. So in there's one particular moment. I love music. I'm a singer. I have always been a singer since I was little, always on stage performing, love worship music. I love, I've been a worship leader. I've been on teams. I love music. Music is a part of my entire life. So when I was battling this loss of losing my mother and losing our son, I became very bitter and I became very angry. Even though I would pray every day and I would press into God every day, I was still very angry because I didn't feel like he understood what I was going through. And so for a period of time, I stopped listening to Christian music. I couldn't do it. I couldn't listen to cliched words. I couldn't listen to music that was trying to get me to focus on God because I was mad. I was angry. I was bitter. I was mad. So I spent a lot of time wallowing in these really sad songs. And Spotify was really good at sending them to my algorithm and
Right.
about this sad song. And I'd be like just adding those sad songs to my playlists and just listening to them all the time. And so in this playlist, there was a song that I had randomly added. I didn't even fully listen to these songs. I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Add that, and listen to it throughout my day. So there was a song that would come on often, and every single time it came on, I would just stop what I was doing and weep. And so the song was called Runaway. And it was about a child running away from their parents. And the parent saying things like, I'm always going to find you. I know you're angry. I know you're hurting, but I love you. And I don't, I'm going to do everything I can to find you. And so I would, when this song would come on, I would weep and I would sing this song as if I was singing it to Ezekiel. So it became my song to Ezekiel, saying, I know you're going to leave. I'm going to cry. I know I'm not going to have you. God's not letting me hold you. And, but I want to do everything I can to find you, to be with you as long as I can. If you wouldn't run away, that would be fantastic. And so I would pray this to him and say, I will always love you and seek him out. And even though this didn't make sense to anybody else, because anybody else I showed this song to, they're like, it's a song about someone running away. This has nothing to do with you and Ezekiel. Like, they didn't see the parallel. But to me,
Yeah.
in my mother heart, I was like, I wanted to chase him like this parent in the song was chasing their child and never let him go. And there was a line of scripture in the song that said, I would leave the 99 to find you, but I didn't think anything of it because a lot of secular artists use Christian themes and tropes in their music. And I was like, she, as far as I know, is not a Christian artist because none of the songs in this algorithm are Christian music. And it didn't sound like Christian music either. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then there was one night that I came home from church alone because there was an event and I was upset and angry and I didn't want to be part of the worship. And so I left early and my family stayed. And as I was listening to the playlist on the way home, the song came on again. And it had been a very emotional day. And I was so overwhelmed and angry with God that when this song came on, I sang it kind of almost in defiance to God. Like, I don't care that you're taking my son from me. Like, I want to move the ends of the earth to be with him. And, I was just kind of singing this in anger to God. And so I came home and I wanted to look up the artist because I'm a nerd and I wanted to look up her lyrics. And so I found that she had posted an annotated copy of her lyrics on her website. And so I got really excited and I quickly downloaded the PDF and I really was not prepared for this at all. I was reading her lyrics. In the annotations on the side was verse, scripture after scripture in the margins, verse upon verse upon verse, and it all over her page, because she said in her website that she likes to annotate her music as she's writing it, and there's scripture all over this PDF. And all these verses were about how God seeks us, how God chases us and loves us so much that he would not leave us where we were. And there was one line. It said, even if you beat upon my chest and tell me you don't understand, I will love you and teach you to love me again. And I just spent the rest of the night sobbing because that's what I did. I literally was beating on his chest and saying, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I don't understand why you're taking this child who is supposed to be a gift from you, something that we had been longing for years. Why are you taking this from me? And so I had no idea that this artist was a Christian. I had no idea that she wrote this song as a love song from God to us. And I just felt in that moment that was God saying, this whole time, I've been sitting with you. This whole time, when you thought you were running away from me, I snuck my way into your playlist. And you've been listening to me all these weeks. And it felt like in that moment, I was really being seen by God. And that changed the whole trajectory of how I grieved losing Ezekiel. I started listening to Christian music again after that. But years later, this is where I really feel, again, God stepped into the moment. So we lost Ezekiel in 2018, and in 2021, I met the artist. And we were able to go to one of her concerts, and because it was COVID, she held these really small concerts, and she lives in North Carolina. I always lived in South Carolina, and she held this concert at a campground on a mountainside, and there were 30 people.
Oh.
And so my husband and I bawled through the whole concert. My husband's crying through the concert. I go up to her after, I take a picture, and I tell her about how much that song meant to me. But because I had short time, I didn't get to tell her the story I just told you. So she didn't quite understand. I didn't do it quite justice, but she smiled. And she's so glad you liked it, But I was just blessed to share that with her, to say, listen, your song changed me in that moment, because God used it to change me and to show that he was there the whole time.
Well, and even just thinking about that, her writing that song, and God knew that that was going to get delivered to you, and that was going to be a tool in the path of your healing, and coming back to Him. That's that is how God works. Somehow He intricately weaves all of our lives together. And
Oh, yes. Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. So at the end of our podcast, well, we like to go for about an hour, so we have a little bit of time. But if somebody listening is in the middle of grief today,
Mm-hmm.
what is one tiny faithful act they can take that honors their pain but also chooses hope?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that the holidays, like I said, are the hardest time of the year. They intensify our sadness, they intensify our loss, our feeling of grief. And sometimes, you know, people are alone during the holidays, and that just creates that isolation feeling. And so I do want to honor the fact that grief is not just the loss of a loved one. Grief can come in many different forms and be the loss of anything that is loved or cherished or valued. A job, a home, a family, and they could still be living. It's not just death that we grieve. Um, and so one thing that I think we can do for ourselves um, is to allow ourselves to grieve, is to allow ourselves to feel it even in this season, to not feel like, well, we have to be happy because this is the season of joy, or I want
Mhm.
to be hopeful, so I'm not going to be sad. But I think if we allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling, give ourselves permission, it's okay that you're not okay. Um, is to just give yourself the time to cry if you need it, to acknowledge that you're in pain, um, and then to take that pain and bring it to God. And the visual I had was the Little Drummer Boy. It was one of my mother's favorite songs. And it's the visual of, I have nothing to give. I have nothing to give this savior of the world, but here you go. Here's all my grief. Here's all my pain. Here's my sorrow. And then I'm going to rest in the fact that you are the savior of the world. You are a God who loves me. And that is the hope that in the peace that I'm going to rest in. That we can embrace him. We can embrace our sorrow, we can embrace our grief, and we're not dishonoring our grief, and we're not dishonoring God. One of my favorite um, uh, Christmas hymns, I used to sing it in official choirs, but my favorite version of this song is actually more folky. It's from Jenny and Tyler. They're a very indie band, folky music, and they took this beautiful hymn, Handel's Messiah, and they just made it into this really powerful song. It's beautiful. But there's one line in this hymn, in this song, and it's in the original version as well. And it is actually from Isaiah 53, verses 4 and 5, which is, surely he has borne our griefs and has carried our sorrows. And why I love that song during Christmas, when it's supposed to be the most happiest time of the year, right? Everybody's singing this is the greatest time of the year. Why I love that is because it's God acknowledging that life is grief, life has sorrows, and he bears them with us. He bears them sometimes for us. And we bring our sorrows to him, acknowledging that he can carry them, he can hold them. I can't do it. I would despair if I was holding it by myself, but that it is his light and it is his hope in the world, him carrying that for us, that we can have hope and grief in the same hand. And I love that. And I think that the key to this is that we have to press in to God. And my husband and I, when we were losing Ezekiel, we made a commitment, because the divorce rate for couples who lose children is extremely high. And so we committed that we wanted to work on this and we didn't want to be a statistic. So as soon as we found out the diagnosis, we started going to therapy every week. And then a year after, we dwindled it down to once a month up until a year after we lost him. But one of the things our counselor said that she said she admired and encouraged us to continue doing when we would kind of lose that is that we continue to press into God. Because when you're hurting and you're grieving, you can do two things. You can either pull away from God, alienate yourself from him, and like I said, kind of wallow in that despair, and be angry. And now I was angry with God, but I was not angry pulling away. I was angry and I was pressing in. And I was pressing in and I was seeking answers, and I was, beating the doors of heaven saying, I want to meet you. I'm angry and I want to see you. But we continue to press in, and every confusing situation, any anger, feeling, frustration, sorrow, we just kept pressing in. And I think that is the key when you're grieving, especially in this season. If you want to have that hope is only when you're pressing in.
Well, that's also really good information, because God can handle our anger.
Yes.
He can handle our sadness. He can handle our joy. He can handle every single emotion that we have as human beings. God can handle that. Something that I have noticed as a thread throughout this conversation is that God gave us emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And in that he gave us emotions, he gave us the ability to be sad, the ability to grieve, the ability to dream and experience joy, and to be in a neutral state, neither happy nor sad,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. But these things, they make a person complex, they make us colorful, they make us fully alive. And I think that is one of the beauties of humanity, is that we do express so many emotions, and that we operate in that, the ebbs and the flows of life. The animal kingdom doesn't do that
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
way that human beings do.
That's right.
We're much more difficult to handle emotionally, but I
Yes.
love it. I don't love to grieve. I don't love to be sad, but I love humanity in
Mm-hmm.
all of its complexity.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. Yep.
He did a wondrous work in us. We are miraculous creatures, for
Yes,
sure.
we are. Yes, we are.
I
Yep.
have so thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
So have I.
It's been great. We had a little bit of a behind the scenes. We were confused on time, folks.
Yes.
But I'm glad that it worked out, because this
Yes.
has been absolutely lovely. And
Yes.
I pray that God blesses you and
Yep.
finish enjoying well, we're just at the start of the Christmas season.
Yes. Yes. Yep. And we are here. I'm in Maine, and we have a big snowstorm going on outside. So
Do
it's
you?
Christmas season for sure. Yes.
We're in Michigan, and we have over a foot of snow.
Oh wow, good for you. This is our first big storm of the year. So
Is
this.
it? It's our second, but I live in Michigan. I wish I lived somewhere warm. I don't know why
Yeah,
I
I
live in the cold.
South Carolina for 11 years. We're from Connecticut. We moved to South Carolina. There for 11 years. I could not wait to leave. It was so hot. I'm so tired
Really?
where it's cold again. Yeah, it's
Wow.
a little too cold for me. I mean, too warm, too warm. Yeah, I lived in Florida as well for a while, and like it's just I need seasons. I need,
I mean, seasons are fun for the change, but I just don't want to leave my house. I just want to stay in. I can't get warm. But
there is that. Yes.
well, again, God bless you, and it was an absolutely lovely conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, bye, Dawn.